do now is show you a kit, the way it will come to you. This kit here is ready to be shipped. It happens to be going to Singapore, but I want to take this kit, open it up, show you what's in the kit, so you can get an idea of what the kit will look like when you get it. These are the main wing cores. And of course, it's just your typical core that's been wire cut. These, of course, are the tip cores. And it's basically the same piece, just cut out. These here are fully symmetrical on the F4. What we're dealing with here is an F4 Phantom. These are fully symmetrical. This here, as you can see, is a Clark Y, semi-symmetrical, and a Clark Y on the tip. When you match these airfoils to each other, even in the bent position, you will discover that the leading edge on the tip is lower than the leading edge on the main part of the wing here. This automatically develops a washout situation. These are all the wood pieces that make up the tail. This is a resting hook. This is a formula that goes across the front part of the fuselage. Landing gear doors. Your splitter plates. Two pieces that go together, glued together like so, and these make the fins. And there's another piece that's in another box that goes on there to build the rest of the fin. These four pieces build the stabilators. Of course, they go together like so, and you glue those together, and there's your stabilators. Your main former, which the fan attaches to, and also the wing spars attached to. Full-size set of instructions. Which generally show the airplane and where everything goes, and I include a lot of different stuff in the instructions on where to put all the drawings for all the different missiles or bombs, AIM-7, Sparrows, or whatever you want to put in there. How to run the fuel lines, which is down this section here, how to run the fuel lines, how to set the tanks up, where everything goes, and they're all drawn to size. Shows all the pylons for all the hardware if you decide to put it on there, and the location for all the pylons. Shows your mounts for your Sidewinder missiles and the pylons for those. A little bit of decoration in the corner. also get the complete instruction booklet, which has a lot of additional information besides on how to construct the aircraft. Showing you photographs and step-by-step instructions on how to build the aircraft. Some on-flight characteristics and what to do with it. A general page on different materials you can use while building the aircraft and how they work. Also a sheet in here to get the company tags. Graham Packaging Design Company sells a complete set of rub-ons for almost any markings you'd want to put on the aircraft, and you can buy just whatever markings you need as individual pieces, so you don't have to buy a complete set that may cost you more than you'd want to spend sometimes. That comes in there. This is a stabilator mechanism here. As you can see, this is the this part goes up through the fuselage, and the fin winds up sandwiching on this here. You have a steel shaft that goes through this brass bushing in there, and it's locked in here. These two aluminum plates, you have all the nuts and bolts in here to bolt these two aluminum plates on place. The control horn is part of it. There's a clevis in here for a ball length clevis in here that goes to the you screw a 256 rod in that and put a clevis on the other end. Your servo goes about here in the aircraft, and then this winds up being the whole mechanism that functions like so. Okay. These fiberglass pieces are your infrared sensor that goes on the nose of the aircraft. If you're building that model, if you're building one of the S models, or one of the other models that doesn't have this on there, or you just don't feel like putting it on there, this is the infrared sensor that goes underneath the nose of the aircraft. These are the little air conditioning pilot air scoops, and there's two of these in here that go on the side on the nose of the aircraft. Another bag, this is the landing gear pads that go in the foam. Front former. There's two of these little pieces in there, and that's the bottom part of the fins. There's different little parts for the stabilators and the resting hook area. Another former that goes in the back of the aircraft where the stab mechanism is. This is the axle for the dual nose wheels. This is all the sheeting, your main wing spars, your second set of wing spars, these wing spars have the proper dihedral angle, and they're inlaid right here, and then when you inlay them into the tips, you line the bottom of this spar up on the bottom of this core and on the bottom of that core, and that'll give you the proper dihedral angle for the tips of the F4. Of course, this is the main spar that goes in about in this area here. Retract block, not only does it embed in the foam there, but it also glues to this main spar there, which gives it a lot of support, so you don't have to worry about that coming out of the airplane on your first hard landing you have. And then we have the fiberglass fuselage. The fiberglass fuselage is the duct tube. The way the duct tube works is once you've got the main former in the fuselage, you got the fan house on there. This just slides over, and it's a tight fit and slides over and seals up to the fan house, and this part here sticks out the back of the airplane. Flare canopy. As you're building the airplane, once you've got the duct tube in and in place, you've got all your stabilator mechanism built, you add this piece to the back of the fuselage, and this winds up being the finished product as far as the fuselage is concerned there. Fiberglass fuselage weighs about 2 1/4 pounds. All the etch lines, you can't see them in this light, I'm sure, but all the etch lines on here where all the hatches are to be cut, all the etch lines for cutting out with a razor saw, you just cut out all the areas to make the hatch and also make all the window openings there. So you got the scale window frame. The canopy goes in from inside, you know, after you've cut out all the windows. The etch lines are all in here. The fuselage will be reinforcing this area for your doors. The lines are all etched on here for making your scale doors for your landing gear. Nose wheel. So that's basically what's in the kit. You can see it's relatively simple to build. You know. Okay, this is the aircraft, what it should look like after the construction. This airplane here is ready to be painted. As you can see, it has one little modification. We have installed a gun on the front where the infrared sensor is. That's because it's a special model that we're building here for the magazine. In the process of building this airplane, you have to put certain servos in the aircraft as you're building it. The servo that operates the stabilator mechanism is already in the aircraft and is located right here. It's sealed inside the airplane. You're generally not going to get to it again. Unless you run into somebody like Garland Hamilton, you won't need to get to it if you use a top quality servo that has good gears in it and about 60 ounces of torque. However, some people are concerned about burying a servo and saying, well, what if I do have to get to it? Well, if you do have to get to it, you can, and the way to do that would probably be to cut a hole in here if you actually need to get to it. I can't really figure out any reason to get to it unless you crash the aircraft, and if you crash the airplane, you'll probably have no problem getting to it. It'll be one of the pieces laying out there with all the rest of them. This also is the only kit I have on the market that requires 2 hatches. There's a hatch here which goes to the engine and fuel tanks in that area. And then there's a hatch here, and once you pull that hatch, you can pull the pin on this hatch here, and that'll release this hatch, which is where the radio gear is. And give you an idea of how it is inside there. This is the underneath of the aircraft, and again there are 2 servos that are are embedded in the wings here on their sides with the control arm sticking up, and that goes directly to the control horn on the aileron there. I don't bother with the inner doors on generally most of the fun fly aircraft I make because the outer door is there and you don't see that unless it's in flight anyway. These two front doors here are hooked up to a servo on their own. When the landing gear retract, these two doors are closed by a separate servo. Okay, this is some of the other kits that we have that are getting ready to be shipped out of here. This is the YF-22, which you know is my new one. This is the fiberglass fuselage, and the duct tubes are inside in here. This is as you build this aircraft requires two formers. It's got one former that goes through here, and the duct tube comes in, seals into this former here. You build the retracts, the landing gear doors, all that, and once you get this area done, then you put in the second former here. The second piece of duct tube goes through that one there, and once you're done in this area, this hatch, you now take this hatch, line the hatch, and actually glue this back in place, because this hatch is all you need to, and you have plenty of access to get to the engine or to the radio area. This hatch, of course, again, you cut this out on this other etched line here, and the canopy comes in from underneath, and that winds up being your hatch and your canopy there. The standard pieces are in here. These are the pieces to build the stabs and the tail. The Stabilator mechanism, all these pieces are already built. This is just more of the pieces, more of the formers and different items that go into plane. Again, you have the full roll plan of instructions, all the sheeting, all the formers, and all the pre-cut pieces that are needed for the aircraft. This is the T-38 or the F-5B, whichever aircraft you decide to build from it. Again, it's just a one-piece fiberglass fuselage. This is the only hatch on the aircraft, and again, the lines are etched on here. And we cut that out for the canopy. This is the clear canopy that goes to the aircraft. This is the fiberglass duct tube that fits in the aircraft, and again, it just slides onto the fan housing. You don't see any wing cores in these kits here because the wing cores have to be shipped in a separate box because UPS limits. You have your main former. You have all your rails for building the hatch area. All your different formers and the landing gear doors and the nose wheel former and splitter plates, etc. These are all your tail feathers, and this is just one of the formers that goes across where the intakes are. Full set of plans with all the pictures, and the Stabilator mechanism is already built. This winds up being the Stabilator mechanism. Your stabs are actually just built sandwiched right over this. Full set of plans. And all the wood pieces all cut to the shapes that they need to be in all your sheeting. This is the F8 Crusader kit, and it's just like the others. This one does, however, have a laxity tube because it's just a straight tube. And it is the aircraft, one of the jets, the only jet I make other than the A-10 Warthog actually, that the wing is removable on this particular aircraft. It's a high wing airplane. Again, it's the same type of stuff. All the rods and stuff for operating all the landing gear doors, and the rod, this one here, the servo is not back in the tail area. The servo is actually further forward, and there's a steel rod that goes from the control horn on the stab and goes all the way forward to hook to where the servo is. All the hinges for all the scale doors is in the kit, and these are just the other parts that go to the plane. Full-size slams. Of course, the same form of instruction booklet. So as you can see, the kits are all pretty much alike. You know, I try to keep the aircraft as simple as possible. two more things I want to mention. One of them is most of my kits recommend to be built as a one-piece airplane with a wing on them. I feel you're already dealing with something that's 72 inches long, 80 inches long. I don't know what you're carrying that with, and whatever you're carrying that with, it would seem to me that it generally can hold something that is 48 inches wide if it can carry something 80 inches long. This is one of the keys to making the airplane not only very light, but very strong. So I recommend you doing that. Now the question that a lot of people ask is, can I make the airplane with the wings removable? Well, of course you can. This is something that you would have to engineer yourself, probably using something like the Byrons and using a second attaching point and whatnot, and making your airlines and your radial lines and everything else disconnect and having to deal with the additional weight of this and the additional servicing of this feature if you want to. But it's nothing that a modeler couldn't engineer if he felt that he wanted to do this to one of my kits. But again, I will say that I don't recommend this. Now, the final item I probably need to mention, and you might be interested in, is what do these things cost? My F4, my T38, my F8 Crusader, all three of those kits cost $350. The YF22 costs $400. The A10 Warthog and the Skyraider both cost $450, and I charge $30 freight to ship you any of these kits. So that's about the prices of them. The price of all these kits has been raised by $50. I want to mention another subject that's very important to me and you, and that is the very first flight of your jet aircraft. Regardless of how many you've flown before or whatever, the very first flight is always a very interesting experience. I know there's a lot of very good flyers out there that this part of the tape probably is not going to be of any importance to you. You can fast forward now if you like. But a lot of times you may feel that you want to use somebody that you feel is better capable of flying the airplane than you are for the very first flight. Sometimes this is a good idea, sometimes it's not. One of the things I learned is a lot of people can fly a certain type of airplane very well, but when they get into a different type of airplane, you know, they're just as lost like you are. The real key to test flying an airplane, and we've learned this through a lot of experience, is mindset. What I mean by that is get your mindset where you have the attitude that something is going to go wrong. If you have this mindset, you are better prepared for something when it does go wrong. If you have the attitude that nothing is going to go wrong and everything's going to go perfectly, then you got to figure out more what went wrong when something does go wrong. So have your mindset right. The second part of that is when you're getting ready for an airplane's very first flight, try to find a reason not to fly it. Anything. It won't steer straight. The engine isn't quite running right. Anything you can find that will give you an excuse not to fly the airplane. If you can't come up with any, it's time to fly the airplane. So that all is part of mindset. Now, I highly recommend that you fly this airplane with a buddy beside you, or someone either beside you that is very qualified, or if you're having him fly the airplane, you stand beside him, so that you have assistance when you need it. Also, the observer should be an observer, not just watching you as you do something wrong or as you are in trouble and he's just sitting there watching you, or you're just watching him. Try to come up with what to do, because it's amazing how you can be trying to save an airplane that's got something wrong with it and totally forget simple little things like get off the throttle. I've seen people just power them right into the ground, never even had a chance. They were so busy trying to regain control of the airplane, never even thought of that. You know, so say those things. I've actually seen that happen. We've actually saved the airplane. The guy was flying the airplane, losing control. I'm yelling, get off the throttle. He got off the throttle. The airplane immediately pulled out of the dive, and he, boy, just fine. You know, saved the airplane. So, as an observer, be an observer, and whoever you have, tell him to do the same. Be observed, be helping you, not just watching you as you fly the airplane. When I fly the airplane on the very first flight, I never touch the trims. When I roll down the runway and the airplane leaves the ground, get altitude first. Get altitude. Don't think of any trims or anything. Just fly the airplane. If you need to hold this, you hold that, hold it. Get your altitude. Fly the airplane. Just concentrate on keeping the airplane in the air, and whatever you need to hold, tell the guy beside you to get to the trim. Tell him to get the trim. Don't let go of a control or have to fight with your fingers and everything else to try to get to a trim while you're trying to do your very first flight in this airplane. That's what the guy's there for. Tell him to give you some up, give you that, give you whatever you need. Let him trim out the airplane for you while you're concentrating on nothing but keeping that airplane in the air. Once you've got it trimmed out and you're pretty happy with it, then you need to do things like check your rates and stuff. When you're flying the airplane, you give an airplane full up. If you have too much up in an airplane and you give it full up, it's not going to do a loop, it's going to do a snap on you. Take your airplane and test this. If you give it full up and it doesn't snap on you, go to your lower rate. When you get the airplane back on the ground, change your rate. When you do a test it, give it a full aileron roll. If that aileron roll is too tight for you, go to the other rate. I recommend flying an airplane for its very first flight at your higher rates. Because if you need it and you have it, that's fine. If you don't have it and you need it, that's not so good. You can always get less. Maybe your first flight looks a little crazy, but you're liable to save your airplane like that. It's pretty obvious to see when a person's flying an airplane if it has too much rate in it, because you'll see the airplane is very jerky in the sky and won't smooth out because every little bit he gives it is too much. But check your rates when you do that. Once you've got this airplane back on the ground, the next thing to check out is check out the whole airplane. See if everything stayed in the airplane, see if anything come loose, see if your airplane was drawing the fuel properly through the tanks. Just check out everything. Make sure your wheels are still rolling, nothing is bound up, etc., etc. And thirdly, check out your airplane before you fly it again, because you may survive the first flight and you may have a clevis come loose, something like this, and if you don't check this stuff, the second flight might not be so good. Always, of course, make sure your battery's up and all that sort of stuff. Always check out everything. Really thoroughly test an airplane before the first flight and after the first flight. From there, you should be okay. And for the people who have the catalog tape, by the way, this tape is being done quite a time after a lot of the other taping was done, and the tape I mentioned, the F4 fan, to show you the F4 fan that needed to be totally restored. Well, this is it. We now have it restored. Okay, thank you. I have another little tape that is available, and it's about a 2-hour long tape, and it starts with the construction of the T-38 and goes all the way through the T-38 right down to the finish of the aircraft. It shows a lot of building techniques. It shows a lot of materials that I use. We do a lot of, I realize you probably think, well, gee, he just works out of the garage. He's just a small time, but you would not believe some of the stuff that comes out of here. We've done a lot of tremendous amount of moving work. No, I'm not just a one-man shop. I have as many as 4 employees. We've had up to 8 employees actually working out of the shop when we're doing certain things. So we do a lot of work that way. But this taught us a lot about how to build aircraft quick, light, simple, ease, and when you're doing movie work, you don't have time. That's the number one thing you don't have. Time is money. If you need to get, everything has to be done in a certain amount of time, in order to get that time frame, if it requires you to put on more people, you just put on more people. You just do it that way because so you have to learn certain techniques that are faster than other techniques, and some that work. There's a lot of model items that are on the materials and stuff that are on the market that are model oriented, and there's a whole lot of items that are just hardware oriented items that are so much cheaper and work as well or better than so-called other items. So this whole video is on how to build an airplane, and we're just running you a quick excerpt of this video here so you can get an idea. And if you're interested in purchasing this video, give us a call. We have this video too. Foam. This will wind up having the proper depth for the pad here, so that when you retract the gear and you got the door on here, it will be laying flat on the wing. After get it down. Once I've got it down, I take a sanding block, no sandpaper on there, and I just rub it on here. We'll see that the edge line will come out very dark where you can see exactly where the lines are. Now if you draw on the fuselage, you'll notice the lines don't come out. It's because of where the edge line is. When the lead hits that, it'll enhance that edge line for you so you can see it, and it'll only do it where the edge line is. Razor knife, and just start the cut like so, and just follow through and cut out the blow-in doors. Okay. So once you got the two blow-in doors, of course, they're there. You need to use a razor knife, not that Dremel tool, because that Dremel tool will cut too wide of a slot there for you, not a clean slot. You need a real clean slot because these doors are going to be used again, or you can just throw them away. I use an assistant to put the wings on because it makes it a lot easier, but it can't be done by itself. All I do is I just take the wing, slide it in place, line up the two marks on the wings there, and have the assistant come in with the modeler's clamp and grab the former with the spar. That holds the alignment in place. Just hitting all those holes and using lots of baking soda and lots of CA and just glue the wing on. And that's all there is to putting the wing on, and it's just that simple. Bring your wheel down until she'll hit and just start drawing around with a pencil there, much as you can. I use a carbide wheel on a Dremel tool here, and I just start cutting that area out, and as I continue to cut that area out, I can continue to bring the wheel down and just continue to make the hole until I've got the hole deep enough and it clears. Reading 1 degree of positive. This will give you that good rotation. So that it fits perfectly to the side of the fuselage in the area where I'm going to install that servo. Now if you want to install balsa wood to fiberglass and never have to worry about it ever coming out of there again, there's an old glue that we used to use back in the old days called Ambroid. It's an acetone-based glue. Now you can sand this one to the shape of the other one, and you can sight through past the fuselage there to make sure you're getting them, you have them completely in line with each other, which they are. It's a guide for the retract. When the landing gear goes up into the retracted position, as you can see, the wheel will rest up against the side of that piece of 1/4 inch, and it will only allow the wheel to pivot just about that much. That way you don't have to worry about the wheel pivoting too much and jamming in there and not coming down. We had that happen on the very first prototype, and I come up with this way to eliminate that problem. So that's just a guide there for the retraction. And also you can take the servo that operates the steerable nose wheel and just mount it to the other side of it, and that's a good place to put that servo. Fan housing is already in it. We'll put the engine on the wing. The tune pipe. I use 1200 milliamp battery packs in the nose of the aircraft because that doesn't require any weight to balance if you use that battery pack. My Airtronics receiver, my other servo that needs to be installed, and you can see that's basically all the pieces that are going to go in the aircraft, and the airplane weighs 10.5 pounds. So the airplane weighs 10.5 pounds now. Is the weight of this airplane, total weight of this airplane is going to be determined on how much paint and all that stuff you put on around in the tire, completely around inside the tire. Make sure when you get to this end here that you've got it nice and backed up on both ends and nice and tight, so it's real tight inside the tire there. And then you have that inside the tire. It gives you a tire that now, as you can see, when you squeeze this here, you can see it can really take a lot more shock. It'll be a better performing tire for you. When you go to put a marking on here, if you run it down and then you, oops, goof or something like that, you just take the eraser, erase it off and start all over again. And there you go. So you can't make a mistake when you're putting your panel lines on there. The project completed. I used the K&B epoxy clear using the gloss part. Well, that's about it. I hope you liked the video. I hope it gave you some information that you could use. I hope it impressed you with the aircraft. I really sincerely feel that if you buy one of my kits, you'll be glad you did.